Thank you very much for being patient with us. I know we've taken a few breaks, but we have to keep our staff refreshed, and she's doing more coffee than dog watch on a police department. But bottom line, Supervisor Tofinelli, you had questions of Ms. Bolton.
I did. These are public monies, regardless of where they come from. They are public monies that come into this county. And you stood there, Lisa, and made a statement that you and your board didn't want elected officials on that board because it would trigger the Brown Act. Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys have a problem with the Brown Act? I don't, these are public funds.
Yeah, so let me explain that.
Why are you guys against any Brown Act type committee?
I'll explain. So it's not recommended for destination marketing organizations. We consulted with the top legal organization that works with destination marketing organizations. It's called Civitas. And I forwarded the information to Tim. And I'm not sure if you guys got the information as well. The reason is, there are several reasons. One is that marketing is kind of a free flow of ideas. It's very creative.
Elected officials aren't creative and people are.
I know that you have to agendize everything, and I know you can't go off your agenda, and I also know that you have to agendize any meeting between all of you. And marketing, destination marketing doesn't really work very well that way. We absolutely, our meetings are public. I mean, you can come, anybody can come to any of our meetings at any time. It's not about being closed. It's about allowing the free expression of marketing ideas. We tend to be, something will come up in a meeting that will affect something that was on the agenda but isn't currently on the agenda. It would slow down our work so much if we had to wait until the next meeting when we had this on the agenda. Marketing is a fast-moving industry, so we don't want to delay, for instance, a new marketing campaign because we didn't have the opportunity to talk about it this last board meeting. Now we're going to have to set up another special meeting. So we move, I think it would be very cumbersome. And that is the story that Civitas told us. They said, you can operate under the Brown Act, but it's cumbersome and we don't recommend it for destination marketing organizations. So that's the entire reason. And I do realize that the Board of Supervisors is very interested in having a voting member on our board. I do think that if you appointed somebody to represent you who came back and reported to you at these meetings, and that you also maybe even took turns coming as an advisory member, we are very, very motivated to keep you happy because you're our funding source. So it doesn't matter if you're not voting. We're going to take what you say very seriously. So you'd have your voting member who knows how you want to vote, and then you could also have your advisory member there as well. That's my answer.
Okay. And I believe Supervisor Mills or Supervisor Garmendi was correct. We're not actually cutting your funding. You are getting more money this year than you got the previous 3 or 4 or 5 years. It's actually gone up. Even if we reduce the percentage, the amount of dollars is going up.
It actually isn't going up if you take into account the amount of the $24,000 we sent back to the county supervisors. The reason we returned that money to you is because when the Butte fire occurred, our board of supervisors at that time said, you know, there are going to be contractors coming in. If we see an upsurge in our income, let's offer it back to the county supervisors to help protect our 33%. So that is what we did in good faith to show that we weren't just taking all of this money that was not being generated by tourism. And so actually what we received last year was from the county was 170-something thousand, but we sent $24,000 of it back. And the point is not about the dollar amount. The point is about the momentum. So we have a momentum going. We don't want to say, well, let's just cap it at this amount, and then we won't have any continued growth. That's the whole point. We want to be spending more, earning more money year over year through the TOT taxes coming into the general fund, spending more money on tourism marketing, generating a healthy, robust tourism industry and keeping that momentum going, that upward trend continuing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mills.
At fear of stretching this out, I spent some time talking with the City of Angels Camp, and during that discussion, there was kind of a moment that I said, one of the things I think is happening here is that you generally know what product you can deliver, and you're very good at doing that, but that the input back and forth from the county, from the city, what do you want? What do you want from me? Has really been very limited. So
Right.
putting people on the board makes sense, but if you have Angel City there, and then for me to step in and get involved in the board, all of a sudden District 4 is loaded. We're overloaded in representation. That isn't really what you want. You need to see somebody from District 1 or District 2 or someplace else that can provide a different perspective than just the district that I'm in. So that's why the reason I've kind of stayed loose from it. But I think it's very important that, you know, if we're going to give money, I don't care who it's to as an organization, there should be some clear expectations of what we're wanting to get for it. And I don't think that we really sat down and set that strategy in motion. We've simply given the money and then listened to what you were able to provide. And that really there's a disconnect there. I think you see what I'm talking about.
I do.
And you're trying to address it
Yeah.
with what you're doing.
I
but-
absolutely do see what you're talking about, and I think part of what we did was we provided a scope of work for the 33% funding that we were expecting to receive this year and hoping to receive this year. But I do think that we need to have more back and forth. I sent each of you individual emails showing you the parts of the new website that specifically pertain to your districts and the content that we've built out. I hope I made this point really clear that this is just phase one. Phase two is that we get input back from you and from the community to make sure that we have not overlooked anything that you would like to see us promoting in your area to tourists coming into the county. And the same thing is the very same strategy is what I'd like to put into expanding the experience guide. And that is the idea that I had for what we would do if we received our full 33% funding this year.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Are there any other questions of Ms. Bolton by the board? Seeing none, once again, thank you. Supervisor Mills, do you have comments? You want to talk about all of it?
Tad wants me to mention something because I had a discussion with the Calaveras County taxpayers while you were on break, and they actually have not made a position on raising the TOT. And my understanding from lodging industry is that as long as that, and I don't mean this to sound awful, but as long as they see that a significant portion of those dollars go back into marketing tourism, then they will be in favor of a TOT increase.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Mills, do you have comments on the budget?
We closing? We're going to the board discussion now?
If he's going to make comments to staff, the hearing's still open.
No, I'm not going
Correct,
to talk to
Counsel?
staff. I'm not talking to staff.
The hearing should stay open if the intention is to ask question or to garner additional information. If it's just purely deliberation, then you would close the public hearing, enter deliberations, and take action.
Thank you, Counsel.
You want to do that? Deliberate?
If you want to go into deliberation, I think we can at this time. No other member of the board or staff has comments during the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll go close the hearing and go into board deliberation.
Okay. One of the things that I find very critical is to spend a few minutes looking at the CAFR report. If we don't look back at what the trending is when we're looking forward, and that's what I think our CAO is referring to, is to try to determine what is that progression or that pattern that's going on. There are projections, and sometimes those projections are based on anomalies, and sometimes they're based upon a standard progression of the economic area. I'm curious about float cost. If we're floating expenses, there is a cost that's involved in that. But overall, if I looked at the overall number of positions that were open in the county, I think there's 93, and 9 of those are on some type of a underfill.
Yeah, the
Underfill?
report does identify an underfilled position, and Judy can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it identifies an underfilled position as vacant, but if you see an underfill in there, it means that it is filled, it's just underfilled at a
Right.
lower level.
I did have to look up the term to understand it, so that's
Right, and
fine.
when we set up that report, so you could see which positions were truly vacant or not, it'll have a
Right.
vacant next to the position that was allocated, but then it'll show the position that we are underfilling it with.
So to that point is if we have 93 vacant positions that are in the budget now, if I was just throw a rough number out of 50 grand a piece, there's $5 million that, is plugged into the budget right now, which there's nobody filling those positions. What I'd like to see is maybe at mid-year, we come back and take another look at open positions and say, we haven't filled these for that first 6 months. That does account to some salary savings, and maybe it's okay. I'm saying is for those open positions, if we get to the 6-month point, that we come back at that juncture and say, we have the salary savings of X, maybe it's $2.5 million, that we need to relook at some kind of budget adjustment so we don't keep carrying those forward department by department.
I think that would be a good, certainly a mid-year exercise. For recommended budget, we did start the practice with salary savings to try and reflect that you're not going to have all those positions filled overnight. My expectation would be then departments to do a true-up, so to speak, of what was your actual vacancies? Is it higher than you expected? So you have these additional savings.
But and also as part of that true-up, it's going to have to be some overtime calculations, some cost to HR, because they're continuing to go through a hiring process or searching process. So those costs need to be calculated into that true-up as well. I'd also want to know, do we need to change our strategy a little bit in how we're hiring? I know that you're thinking about going through and just kind of reviewing each position, the position control list for whether or not it has parity. And that's going to be a step process over the next 6 months to even a year as we work that through. Does that make sense?
Judy wants to speak to that.
Yes, I have been working with CAO Lutz on how we are going to deal with the disparities, and we have identified positions that are have high turnover and of course with the high turnover, a lot of times then we see how they are quite a ways out to our comparables. And then also other positions, in addressing what the auditor was bringing up, we have positions within the county that we're trying to make sure that those employees are in the correct classifications and they're doing the jobs that they're supposed to be doing. And yes, that will take time because we do have to do desk audits with all of those employees. We have started the process, but it is not done overnight.
And I fully understand that it's a time-consuming issue, and I think that the auditor's point, she repeated that statement in the budget process last year because I was sitting back there and listening to that, and we can't turn a deaf ear to it. If it's one of those things that's helping to exacerbate our turnover issue, then that's one of those things that we can start to address. It might not be instant, but if we started to address it, at least we're there.
Yes, and we have started that process. And one of the things that is important, and the CAO and I have discussed, is that we do have to have a policy on how we are going to address these disparities, because it's not just one department, it's across the county.
Well, an example is in facilities, you have it located here as 7 of the 12 positions are vacant. All of a sudden you come to a point where how is that functional? And it does create issues for those departments where they are continually in shortfall.
Right, and we do have a lot of several of those positions, we do have offers out, but they do go through sheriff's background checks, which takes quite a bit of time.
We've
Correct.
tried to modify our process a little bit there too, like where we know we have extensive background checks on facilities, we've actually brought in some extra hire while that extra hire goes through the full background check. That way we can get them here doing work outside of the jail where they're not in sensitive areas until they pass that background check.
And if we
Again,
have-
just trying to speed up that process a little bit.
Correct, and creating some, at least partial functionality within the position rather than leaving it totally empty. I might remind everyone, I don't know what other supervisors doing this, but I don't take any medical with the county. I didn't take any medical at CCWD. Some can and some can't. And it's just a matter of, and I don't want to have it to be a place where a person doesn't run for this position simply because the salary's too low, the medical benefits are not enough, et cetera. We need to be sure that we incentivize. But in my case, I don't need it, so I don't take it. let's on memberships for the Board of Supervisors. We need to add in the Eastern San Joaquin GSA. That's not in here. And so I don't know what that membership cost will be, but it will be something that we need to put in that budget.
We were just having a conversation, time flies, I think it was last week with CCWD on what that cost might be. And that was exactly the thought that I had is, okay, we need to budget that membership.
That's a good point, because the Eastern San Joaquin Basin is, in their last meeting, we're trying to determine what those costs for each entity was going to be. And Walter Ward, who is part of our basin authority, said that it needs to be based upon risk. In other words, if you're the one that's creating the most risk, you need to pay the biggest bill. And that went over like a lead balloon with Stockton and some of those other areas. But the point still is, we wouldn't be at the table if it wasn't there were certain areas that were overcharging and removing too much groundwater, and it's their reason that we're at the table in the first place.
Can I add?
Supervisor Milton, could I interrupt just for a moment?
Sure.
CEO Lutz, as a result of my presence in Sacramento, the issue of AB 1250 came up again.
That's another one.
And just for the public's information, that is a bill that's in process now to prevent counties and cities from using outside contractors. Now, I understand that bill has been back for revision, and it's coming up again. It's a very hot potato in Sacramento. I don't know which way it's going to go. It's being aggressively campaigned against by CSAC and things, but that is going to be a very, very important issue if that bill does pass.
I completely agree. That truthfully is a game changer in terms of a lot of operations here locally for health and human services, particularly in behavioral health, where we're running the locum tenens and we just can't get the people. And there's this lack of understanding that we have an option to just hire a clinician. It's that easy. Well, clinicians are hard in almost every rural area, and we're no exception. So it really then provides a bunch of onerous reporting, onerous studies and analysis to justify why we're contracting out, which basically makes it more expensive to contract out. And we run into that certainly with Health and Human Services, certainly with our integrated waste. And then when we start to drill down to lower levels, some of our other contracted vendors, that for the most part, we've realized efficiencies by doing that, because government doesn't always do it right or to do it most efficient. And so it'll be, if that does pass, we're going to have a work group set up right away with the affected departments to really work through those impacts.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Supervisor Milton.
That's a very good point, because that speaks to those purchasing and contracting policies, and I know we're very deficient to some degree in having a stated policy within the county. So, it might be an opportunity for us to just drill into it and look at it and see what it does. The other part is in our special districts, I know that it had been mentioned in the past, even in grand jury reports, about the GAN limit for special districts. Murphy's Lighting District, Ms. Gowan was one of them. And there is a calculation for that. Should we be going through some type of a little mental calculation on those districts to be sure that they are meeting the requirement?
Well, I was gonna say, I think that the auditor does that already, and she gave me the, comment again of obviously Murphy's Lighting, and I think Copper Fire, are they?
Murphy's Lighting is the one. There
Oh,
is one
Murphy's
fire
Lighting, sorry.
district that they have to go back to the voters every 3 years or so to get that
That's-
appropriations increase. Yes.
Yeah, and they just did it.
Yeah, so my office does the county's GAN limit calculations. That will be coming forward. I think I just slated it to go on the 24th of October because there's publishing requirements beforehand and whatnot. But I did remind CAO Lutz at recommended budget that we really need to do something with Murphy's Lighting. So there needs to be a public outreach to coordinate with those community members and figure out how to spend the money. They need to spend the money.
Are there any other districts right off top of your head that might be in that same pickle?
I believe Arnold has a Arnold Lighting.
Getting close?
No.
Something similar to Murphy's.
No. Everybody else is way under.
Yeah, Arnold is the only one
We
that
just spend money on that lighting.
I know.
Yes,
but
because you
Murphy's-
have money. The
Murphy's-
problem is when you're not spending the money, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
So Murphy's Lighting is the one district that's under the Board of Supervisors that has a
Okay.
GAN limit issue. In Copper Fire's issue, the problem is they need to expend more than they have the allowance for under the traditional GAN limit calculation. So that's why they have to go back for voter approval to increase their appropriations limit. In the case of Murphy's Lighting, they're expending way under their GAN limit. And so therefore, the argument is overtaxation. And they need to spend that money, otherwise they shouldn't have it.
Or they need to return it to.
Or they need to return it, and that's how, yeah, it would be a refund.
I'm sure that'll be a topic of discussion at their next meeting.
Yeah, so on the 24th, I'll be bringing forward the GAN limit calculation, but my office can't do it until the final budget is passed.
Thank you, Ms. Callen.
Thank you, Ms. Callen.
I have to bring forward from the preliminary budget about charges for services, specifically on CSA 4. There's $52,000. It's a direct assessment charge for services in the budget for this year. And yet, as we've had conversations back and forth, how much have we done there in terms of actual road maintenance or road work? It's minimal at best. So that and the $20,000 charge to Bar 20, CSA 2 is the same situation where they've done more work in Bar 20. I know they have because I've been talking with them. But CSA 4, that's just a real thorny situation. I'll reserve my comments on the fire fee for right now, the water enhancement fee.
And I was going to comment on CSA 4. That actually is an item that I discussed with Public Works last week when I had a meeting, specifically on looking. I know there are some significant concerns on the old road patches that are now deteriorating in a way that we need to address. My comment was there's clearly the funding in there that we need to move forward and address those.
Yeah, I remember the reserve, I think I was looking at in the CAFRs last year was 297 or 279, something like that, thousand. That's in the budget. It's not like they don't have the money. It's just a matter, and that was one that was paid because it was a Superfund cleanup site because of the asbestos. It's not registered or listed anymore, but it's one of those. I appreciated in your opening page, C.O. Lutz, in your second paragraph where it says increases budgeted general fund contingency over the recommended budget, achieving 3.5% appropriations. As you know, the limit's 3%. And they're sticklers about that. So I'm glad that we're starting to pull away from that number and start to get some separation there and developing a strategic business plan. You repeated that in your recommendations today, and I think those are critical pieces to our success. And when I was in that training with our two analysts, you two, I don't know, is that many counties do have strategic plans, and when departments or organizations bring things before that board, you have to say, how does this fit within the strategic plan, or it just doesn't even get brought up. So having a plan in place will make a difference as to whether or not we're aligned in a consistent manner going forward. And I'm so thankful for your explanation on A87 costs. They wouldn't even touch that at the meeting the other day. Because if we're going to set aside, and something we need to think about is, if we're going to fund something, do we want to look at it instead of a year-over-year funding source, of saying to some of these places, these community organizations, for instance, that just like we do with Calaveras Mariposa Community Action Agency, say, this is money for you, but you need to look at it as a leverage, not to look at it as a continued funding source. If they're always dependent upon that funding source in some of these ways, they'll get the living on and they won't look for anything else. I'm not speaking to the Visitors Bureau, I'm thinking in many other directions as well. But it's just something that we need to think about is that, the Visitors Bureau had to give $24,000 back during the Butte fire, just out of the blue, and you folks did that out of the goodness of your heart, really. You didn't have to, but the point still is that if we start thinking in that direction, we'll start looking at leverage opportunities. I'm going to leave it at that for now, because the other part that we need to discuss is the fire districts and the Visitors Bureau and the TOT and all that. So I think that's a whole different discussion that we can all do together. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Mills. Supervisor Clapp, any comments? Any further comments? Supervisor Tofinelli? Supervisor Garamendi? Okay. At this time, we need an action item, or?
Well, I was going to say there were kind of a couple real discrete items within there. The
Okay.
personnel piece on the list of personnel positions, if you would like to modify any of those going forward, as Supervisor Garamendi suggested. Also, the allocation on the fire districts, both TOT and Prop 172. And then dovetailing into that, obviously, discussion on, or direction for Visitors Bureau, and revisiting the economic development, which is not in the new position list, but is a old item from recommended.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I might make a suggestion, just to make it easier, see how Lutz has all these items, and maybe
In the
you
list.
just pose a question, go down the list, and we'll just start working through them.
Yes.
Boom, boom, boom.
Great.
And that way you can keep the score.
I would agree.
That's
a great
efficient.
way to do it.
And when you get board direction, stop.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. When
We
get
throw the
majority
gavel
vote,
at you.
Next item.
So why don't we do personnel first?
Yeah,
That
Sure,
might be the-
whatever's on your list.
So going through the personnel positions on the ad positions, we had the 5 noted ad positions. And if you need me to repeat them, it's on page 26 of your presentation.
There's no page numbers.
There's no page numbers on it. Yeah, go back.
Position reclassification, add.
Personal ads.
Personal ads, okay.
I don't know how I got a page number,
I
I'm
got it,
sorry.
I got it.
That's so weird.
Is
We
it
found
early
it.
in or late?
Okay, just trying to confuse us.
We'll fake it.
All right, so first item, Public Information Officer / Chief of Staff for the board.
Want to discuss it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
here-
we can deliberate on that.
Here's my-
Supervisor Tofinelli? Sorry. Supervisor Garamendi, you want to start?
I've already given my opinion. so-
Okay. Supervisor Mills?
here's my point, and it only comes from a historical perspective from a water district, is that how the public perceives you can be best regulated through a PIO. In other words, if there's a consistent message and it's not all over the board. So having somebody with that experience. Does that mean we need somebody full-time? I'm not certain. The reason I say that is because I noticed that they tapered it down after they got through their rough period of how they were perceived by the public. So, but is a PIO important? if they're serving the purpose that you intend them to serve. Sometimes PIOs can simply be an office spot and not truly able to do the work. CCWD was able to find Joel, and here was the editor from the Calaveras Enterprise, and I was familiar with the area, familiar with the people, familiar with the agency. That all works in your favor. Can we find somebody of that quality? That's what we should be looking for. If we can't, I'm not so certain it'd be a real good idea, and we might want to revisit it at the mid-year if that is the direction the board wants to go. But I do see the value of a PIO. When I was in corporate, you didn't say anything. The PIO talked for you. So it's and I think with the sheriff's department or the police department, the same thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, you have especially in law enforcement, you have a PIO.
And they are
And
specially
all
trained.
communications are usually through that PIO at all press conferences, press releases, and this is what Calaveras County Sheriff's Department does. I believe Sergeant has just been assigned to that position after a promotion of Sergeant Eberhard.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Sergeant Whiting, that's correct.
Okay. So thank you for the addition of the conversation, but I just feel that PIO is something that we could use if it's utilized correctly and the right person is there.
I'd like to comment on, we've started a recent process where we use the CAO's office for our PIO, if you will, right now, due out of necessity. I once also questioned, do we have enough duties for this position at this time? But it also serves several purposes, and that being the chief of staff. I would be in a position to look at it mid-year, see where we're going. I know we have a lot of big decisions ahead of us, a lot of big issues, so let's check it mid-year and revisit that. Do you agree, Supervisor Toffenelli?
I would have to agree. This is not a critical position for me. I understand that, it could be very useful. I don't think we have the 40 hours a week time frame for this position. And I would agree with Supervisor Mills and Supervisor Oliveira.
Okay. Supervisor Clapp, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I'm sure in the boat with you guys at this point. I can count. It's a position I would like to see, right now, but I would settle for midterm. I mean,
I believe Supervisor Garamendi has already voiced his opinion on that. Excellent.
We can talk about it then.
CO Lutz. Next item?
Next item, facilities maintenance worker, 1, 2, 3.
I'd say go at that now. You got
Or
the right.
maybe it would be helpful for the remaining 3, or remaining 4. I can add 2.
I would say go with all 4.
Okay.
I would echo that. Go with all 4.
same here.
Agreed. 7:10.
Okay, so we're going to bring the administration one back midterm?
Yes.
Okay.
And then as long as we're here on personnel adds or deletes, do we want to talk economic developer?
Sure.
I would agree with Supervisor Garamendi on mid-year on that. Once again, we have some pretty big issues in front of us in the next 90 days.
This one's a little different in that if we're going to do this, we're going to have to delete the position, or I guess if the intent is to hold it, we can certainly visit holding it until mid-year, but we do have the allocated position at this point, and we've been recruiting.
I'd like to see it now, and the reason is because you do not dig yourselves out of a hole and then go find somebody to help you. This is an individual who has to have that expertise, like a Larry Cope, who can help facilitate, the direction and the method. This is like an ombudsman, if you want to put it in that way. They have to be an intermediary between the business community and the government, and help step through a lot of those landmines that we have in codes and laws. They've got to help create that vision. And so if we're going to move ourselves forward in economic development, I think we need to do that now, not wait.
I would agree. I would think we need to do that now. I think we should have done it before. We lost a lot of time, and the fact that Supervisor Mills brought up that Larry Cope is willing to help us go down this road, I think now is the time we move forward. So,
You know, my position is, I needed one 6 months ago. I mean, I have pads in my area that needs to be filled, and even the medical center, it would be, you know, it would really help them if they had someone out there advocating for them to get those pads occupied. So, I mean, I needed it in January. I don't need it next January.
You got 3.
Yes, then we will keep going.
Well, I could count as well, so
Well,
I'm gonna lose that one.
I
but
could count, but I want to comment.
I'm gonna make, just if
Go
I
for it.
can, make a comment. You gotta love the irony that we're hiring someone to go fishing for a new industry while we're sending the $350 million industry out. So, hey, I fish all the time, so.
Yeah, my concern is, once again, we have decisions to make in the very near future. And if we go through the selection process, find someone that we really, really appreciate, and then all of a sudden, we have to say, it was nice, but adios. I don't know if that's fair. And it's the roll of the dice, right? At this point, I just don't want to fill a position that we have to tell that individual, thank you, but no thanks.
Before you move on, one of the things that I think, and this is just to shift gears a little bit, and I know Auditor Callan brought it up, and that is about the PERS, unfunded liability. And knowing that that's going to hit us, that's going to be like 3 times higher than what it was over the next 5 years. It's going in that direction. And I think she had a very, very good point of trying to develop some type of a rate stabilization trust. I think that's an excellent idea, and I would like to be sure that the board is willing to go in that direction, start reviewing that as an option, so that we can gain some sense of parity in that, because that's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse if we don't start being proactive on it.
I do agree, and I think that falls in that category of knowing where we're headed and knowing that we have a little bit of time but not much. And when we looked at, we had discussed the rate stabilization, and I think that probably is a good option. I would suggest we probably need to look for more funds beyond the 1.5, because that isn't going to, it's not going to buy us enough. I think it'll help. Every little bit's going to help, but it won't buy us as much as I would like to see to really to buy it down. But that is a very prudent way to at least smooth out some of the challenges. And I certainly get enough calls from salespeople wanting to sell me that product.
I know CCWD about 2012 or 2013, they actually took out a loan for $2 million to pay their unfunded liability down to get that corrected. So not that we can go in that direction. That's not a solution for us, but we need to start looking at that as kind of the elephant in the room here too. So thank you for your time.
And then position reclasses, I would just ask, is there any one specific reclass that anyone has an issue with or would like to address?
Are we top heavy?
In which area?
Only an admin.
Yeah, in the admin side? No, I'm not that admin. I'm thinking of, I saw some notes in here that you have supervising case managers have 7 people that they handle per manager. And as you can understand well, it's a rule of 10s.
Mental health case management is a little different. A lot depends on the particular type of case management that they're providing. I don't know if HHS is...
No, they're not. Oh, he's
And I
here.
don't know, Marcos, if you can speak to, in terms of specifically on these mental health case managers, what types of services they're doing. Coming from a Health and Human Services agency, I know it can vary greatly depending on which program or department they're in, the client need level, and the level of staff they're supervising.
Yeah, my only purpose in the conversation is to understand span of control and to be sure that we are not overextending them and we're not underextending them, that we do have the right number of people under that particular manager for the type of workload that they're doing.
So absolutely. If you look at the structure of behavioral health, so mental health and substance abuse together, we have roughly 65 people, and right now there's only 3 people who are in the management class. So we have the Deputy Director of Health and Human Services, who also acts as the Director of Mental Health. We have the Deputy Director of Behavioral Health, and we have an analyst. Those are the only 3 in a management classification. So the attempt to reclassify people here is we are taking the supervisors and making them management in order to have that reporting structure, in order for them to be able to do evaluations, so all these 65 people don't fall under these 2 primarily managers in the building. So it is not, we're not adding money, we're not trying to give them raises, by no means no. If you look at it, most of them are going to the same rate, just with the management classification. The services and the level of services they provide are indeed at a higher level. We in mental health serve the severely mentally ill. This is not the moderate or the mild, it's the severely mentally ill who require a lot of attention. And yes, when you break it down, about 6 or 7 people, but most of our services are billable to Medi-Cal, so a lot of time is also providing the service and the management behind on making sure we're entering the notes correctly, so we do get reimbursed at a proper rate as well.
I'm just wanting to be sure that we have thoroughly looked at the span of control. If you're saying that you have 3 people on 65, that's
Yes.
quite a split. So you're
That-
trying to backfill and provide some mid-level management in there
Yes.
to help
Yes,
with that. I
because we don't have
understand
that mid-level management at this current moment.
Correct. Thank you for your explanation.
I have a question before you go away. I see here we have eligibility worker 3
Yes,
being moved to County Veterans Service Officer?
Correct.
Is that position currently doing that job?
that position is currently doing that job, and when we look at the funding source and the subvention funding they bring in, they need to be a veteran service officer, or else we're at risk of having to return that revenue that we are receiving for that position.
Okay, thank you.
Any further?
Next.
So in terms of the reclasses, then, just clarification from the board, no concerns, we can proceed with all of those as.
I'm good. I'm good. And just a quick comment. I had the opportunity to go over the restructuring plan in County Counsel's office with County Counsel Stedfield, and I think it's a very, very good plan, very effective plan. I'm looking for the future, the very near and distant future, and I think it's a good move at this time to staff up the way it's been presented.
Now on to the easy ones, right? So now the remaining items that I had from my list, County Fire District funding, Calaveras Visitors Bureau and TOT funding formula, and Chamber. So if we want to take fire districts first, or do you want to take Visitors Bureau first?
I
'Cause
want to
they're-
take the chamber first.
Or Chamber, okay.
Yeah. Because that's one that I agree with Al when he was up making a comment about conflict of interest. And I think that this is a situation where we will create a conflict between trying to represent businesses and also be representing the government, because they are the ones that are giving you the funds to do it. I think our economic development coordinator is going to be able to do much of what we might be asking of the chamber to do. So I would like to withhold doing that kind of contribution at this point. Maybe at mid-year, we want to look at it again if we want to shift direction, but I wouldn't be in favor of doing it at this time.
So, it's been a long night. I'm a little bit confused.
Buckle up.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with Supervisor Mills. Maybe we can look at this at mid-year. I have some concerns with it, that along the lines of giving public funds. I know they're 501c3 entity, but I just have some current concerns I think I need to look at before, so I'd like to, I'm agreeing to bring it back maybe at mid-year and revisit it.
You got 3 or 2 or what here?
I heard two.
You know, I'm not sure whether I've got a conflict or not. I was not part of this conversation of a request from them, but I do serve on their board. We certainly give plenty of money to 501c3s in the community. So I don't think we've got a problem doing that, but
I might suggest, because you
I
are
might
on their
suggest I
board,
keep
you
my mouth
might
shut on
recuse
this one.
yourself.
Well, just disclose before you,
I disclose I am on the board. I disclose I'm on the board. I was not part of the discussion for the request. Here's my disclosure.
Okay.
Here I am.
mid-year?
Mid-year.
Mid-year, you got 3. Sir? 4?
Mid-year.
Okay.
Abstain.
We'll know more in mid-year.
All right, so now, again, going back, I don't know which order you want to take the last 2 in fire districts or CVB.
You want to catch CVB now before?
Let's do CBB. These folks have been here all day, so is fire.
Well, you had 50,000 set aside for the Visitors Bureau. If we said mid-year we could take 25,000 of that and plug it back either into the fire department or into CVB. I mean, that's just an option because it's sitting there on the table. So it would be up to the other supervisors what your thoughts would be about how you'd want to make that work.
I'm going to, if I might say, I'm going to go with the CAO's recommendation as it stands regarding CVB.
I would follow Supervisor Garamendi's lead on that, but I want to make sure that everybody understands that the top tax in Calaveras County needs to really be investigated, and all efforts should be made to bring that up to par with our surrounding counties. And I know it's going to require a vote of the people, but I would solicit all the help of everybody in this county, all departments, to make that happen. It's going to be a tough road to go, but I think it can be accomplished if we do it wisely and we do it smart and fairly. It's my piece.
I would like to see them continue to be funded at the 33.3% level and have a discussion and see what it is that our expectations are and how they're going to be able to meet those expectations, and then from there decide. Because we're now 3 months nearly into the budget year and we're talking about not fully funding. That's a whole different situation than talking about it in December, January. So I would like to just keep it status quo until such time as there's been a complete and full discussion with the board as to how that they want this to play out and what their direction would be.
For a four-way split.
Four-way split? Who's got 3 votes?
I just want to say that this is a time situations that it's very difficult being in the position up here to make a decision on which way to go. Public safety, though, in my opinion, is one of the main functions of any government, especially at the local level. And I know for years, being involved with the fire department, that they've been underfunded for many, many years. And it was brought up earlier by Jason about 3 drownings in the lakes. And it's not just showing up and being the first responder at that time. If the body doesn't surface, are you not there the whole time until it does? Do you not stay there until, if it takes 2 days, if it takes 3 days, you're on, and you get nothing back for that? As far as the TOT tax, and these are people that are coming into our county to use our facilities. Other times, you're first responders in accidents of these people, visitors coming into our county. Many times when there's some problems at any of the inns or hotels or whatever, you guys are first responders there. and you're dedicated, and you are in a limited funding. So I understand that portion of it. And I understand the CBB. I've always supported CBB because I believe in this county, they are one of the major contributors to economics in this county. So it's kind of a torn situation, but at this point, seeing that the amount of dollars difference over the number of years, I would have to go with the CAO's recommendation, simply based on public safety and being able to get the people there and in safe when it's time for you to perform your jobs and have the proper equipment on your rigs when you show up. So that's where I'm at.
Are we on fire districts now? Are we on fire districts now?
Well, we were on the TOT, so
TOT.
I'm trying to say why I'm going down the road where I'm going.
Okay.
You know, it's a very difficult situation here to look at, but I'm going to go with the CAO's recommendation, 25% allocation.
So that would be a
Three votes.
3-2 vote?
For one vote.
Oh, 4-1?
You know, plus I'd like to say that I intend to help you as much as I can to get the tax passed or the fee raised on that. And I know Jason and them will be helping too, so it's gonna be a team effort of all of us working together because it needs to be raised. So I understand where you're coming from, I appreciate the work you do, and I will do everything I can to help get that passed.
CO Lutz.
And then the last item would be fire districts.
And in fire districts, I'd like to see that 25, or at least half of that 50,000, it was originally in the budget allocated for the chamber to go to the fire district, on top of what you've already agreed to here.
Okay.
If you want to take the full amount, or you know, depending on if you want to revisit the issue, like you said, about mid-year with the chamber, then 25,000 could definitely be put towards them now.
The board can, I'd really be interested in input on if you'd like the full 50. Obviously, it was there. It's easy enough to change it in the line item. It doesn't change the budget. No, that was true discretionary funding. And the way that I kind of tried to set this up, I always prefer where we can have funding formulas for some of these, which is why that 10%, 172, 25% TOT, because then it's kind of that guarantee piece. My question would be, would you want the 50 as a kind of that one time because we had it there, allocate it there as maybe an additional amount to go into that, recognizing that it might not come back, you know, in the same form next year, but instead, if we're looking at the 172 formula or something else.
Yeah, I would rather see a percentage formula in any of these calculations. It just makes everything work much smoother. But at the same time, it is one-time money that we have, and they should treat it as one-time money. If we have it accessible next year, then we can talk about it. But for right now, let's find it a home, and we'll put it there.
Supervisor Tofinelli.
I'm going to have to disagree with that. The reason I did not agree to give the $50,000 to the chamber and wait till mid-year was to maybe hold back those funds in reserve. To allocate it now after we decided not to give it to the chamber, I can't agree with that. The rest of what's on this presentation for fire district I would agree to, but not the allocating half of that 50,000 that we did not allocate to the chamber.
I agree with Supervisor Tofinelli. I'd love to give the firefighters, but we have to have a process.
I would go with Supervisor Tofinelli also, and look at the mid-year on this.
And those, I
Okay?
believe, were the last ones that I needed firm direction from the board on, unless there's another item that the board would like to see changed or modified to bring back for final budget.
Well, as part of the water tender enhancement fee, that was one that I gave you a copy, and I don't know, did you get a copy for everybody to?
I made some copies. I was going to hand some to
hand out, and this is the 92 resolution as well as the 1995 resolution, but I think every board member should have it as well as the public should have it so that they're aware of what those rules of the road were back then.
I'll scan this and email it to the board and also to the chiefs.
Anybody
That'll
that's
probably be
interested, because I think we really need to know where those funds, how they've been generated over the years, what level of funding was put in place. I was one of those that helped spec those water tenders back then, so got a little history with this. But they're coming of age, and if it's time to start thinking about replacements, we've got to be sure that we have a funding source in place to be able to do that. And it was part of this agreement when we wrote it back in '92. So I just want to be sure that we get another look at it from a board level as part of our discussion for the budget, so that we don't get caught short 3 years from now when we're hitting that 30-year point with a need for funding, when there should be money in a reserve account that will start taking care of those replacements.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Mills. Supervisor Lutz, need further direction? Any other items?
I know.
I keep doing that. CAO Lutz.
No, again, I think, yeah, that's got to be it. If there's no other items that the board has concerns with, I'll incorporate these changes, which will then be coming back as the final budget recommendation on the 26th.
Thank you very much for your efforts, your staff efforts. That is one of the most comprehensive budgets I believe Calaveras County has seen. And that's saying a lot.
And I got to tell you, even from a corporate world, I'm very impressed with the level of detail and the thoughtfulness that was put into it and the conversation that went around it. And I appreciate the other board members for their input in trying to make this work.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
So at this time, we need to continue public comment from this morning.
That is correct. Ladies and gentlemen, you will have 3 minutes for public comment. This is a continuation of this morning's session when we, and keep in mind, if you commented in the morning, you cannot comment now.
Good
No,
night,
he was,
good night, staff.
Mr. McManus was in line. We ready to go?
Oh, okay. Bill McManus, Band Committee. I just wanted to say that it's been a long day for everybody, but I wanted to thank several of the supervisors. Over the last year or two, however long you've been around in different places, we've tried to communicate with you, give you as much information as possible. We appreciate you being attentive, accepting our information, sometimes responding back. We appreciate all that. We know you're listening. But we also want you to know that we're listening to you. And sometimes we're listening for what you say, and sometimes for what you don't say. And for Supervisor Tofinelli, we've heard you say from time to time that banning dispensaries gives you a little bit of heartache because of the possible lawsuits. I can tell you that I've tried to do the research on that. I'm not saying it's for sure. I have yet to find any dispensary that's been closed down that's filed a lawsuit and successfully won against the city or county. So I think that might be an irrational thing right now. I'm not saying it never happens. I'm saying I haven't found it. So, and also getting pot out of the neighborhoods. We've heard some of the people that you represent have said that. You know, that's fine. But we wonder about the legalities and the contaminated sites that it leaves behind. We don't know how workable that is, but we're listening to you. Your people are listening to you, and of course they let me know about it too. For Supervisor Mills, you've said that the state should be responsible for cleaning up the toxic waste sites that they have foisted on this county by their actions. I agree with you partially. First of all, I don't think the state's going to have the money to clean up anything. And second of all, the state didn't do this without giving you the opportunity of saying no. Everything that's happened before, everything that's gone before, you know that you have the right to ban anything you want. You had the opportunity in January, and February, and ever since then. So if the state is putting us in a bad way, you aided and abetted in that effort. You could have done something about it. One of the hot issues that's coming up right now, of course, is the environment. We're hoping to get more information on the toxic sites that are being found and abated. We're worried about, again, the employee contractor exposure to toxic contamination. And one thing that does trouble all of us is when we hear about the abatements and them taking it to the landfill, are they putting contaminated product into our landfill, which the state may decide we can't do, shut down our cell, and then we're 3 years away and $8 million away to open a new cell. In the meantime, we'll be trucking our garbage to San Joaquin County. Those are the kinds of things that you have to look forward to, be prepared for. And so, like I say, as you listen to us, we listen to you, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. McManus.
Is this yours, Bill? Okay, it was just up here. I've got. I've just submitted an email correspondence. I'm going to read from it right now.
Sir, just once again, by handing that document.
It's
to the
public
board clerk,
record.
It's public record.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to have to go quickly here, sorry. This is an email dated August 11, 2017. It comes from Bill, Deck Doctor at the SB Global, to info@bandcommercialcultivation.com. It says in it, "Friends, here is a copy of a letter I sent to Dennis Mills in his response regarding our request that the board adopt a plan to create a registry of environmental citations. Attached is a copy of our proposed registry requirements. Hope all of you thank Dennis." Bill: "Dennis, I apologize for not running this by you prior to submitting it to the board. We feel that it is a white-hot issue with many residents, and I want to get the process moving as quickly as possible. The hazards of pollution sources commonly found on pot grows, both applicant and non-applicant, present a clear and present danger that may be odorless, colorless, otherwise undetectable. Even knowing that multiple citations may have been issued on problem properties does not provide residents with enough information for them to take precautionary measures, coupled with potential of infiltration into local aquifers. The specter of silent and deadly pollutants affecting the broad areas of our rural county become a very major issue and problem for the board to contend with. I know you get the picture. I am asking for some board attention be given to the outline that I presented to the board. I will take the input from various department heads and possibly some funding to start the process. If a public meeting is needed, I can alert our vast network of residents, and I am certain the turnout will be surprising. Even if I have to prowl the corridors of Government Center and meet with department heads on an individual basis, I would like to know that we have the backing of the board. Many thanks in advance, Bill McManus." Response from Dennis Mills. This is a cut and paste response that was put in the body of the email. It goes, "This is matter of environmental damage was created by liberals in Sacramento approving pot growing in our county and not thinking about the consequences. I was just in Sutter Creek this afternoon talking to several Amador supervisors and their sheriff. Now they know some of the problems, and we need to push the narrative that everyone needs to know where these sites are, the level of contamination, and how soon the state will be here to clean it up and make us whole again. My immediate goal is to have environmental health create a functional list of all APNs that will be that have been shown to contain hazardous materials or have been cited in environmental damage. The county needs to have a clearinghouse that can be easily referenced by anyone, including the public. The Ag Commissioner is then required to notify the state of any products that need remediation. The more the public learns about this damage, the more outraged they will be that is being hidden from them, from their view, to the potential detriment of their health and the health of their families. Don't let this go. This is their Achilles heel right now." Dennis Mills. This email seems to have come from a source other than a public email. If this is a private email correspondence and the communications just alluded to by the previous speaker are going on private channels, this is a deeply problematic issue. We should have full disclosure and Public Records Act availability of documents when we request these documents. We hope that you pursue this matter.
Thank you, sir. Further public comment? Mr. Edson.
Go ahead, top that.
Pretty darn intelligent for a pot grower, eh? I couldn't do that. So, let me say that fear-mongers don't scare me. With fear-mongering and paranoia, I can see right through them, and it infuriates me that they seem to have so much influence over my life and thousands of others that think like I do. It enrages me because their ignorance may waste the very scarce resources available to make a huge improvement in our lives as we sit here and try to scrape a few dollars together for our fire department. And it disgusts me to see the board about to take place in Calaveras history as the board that fails to listen to all of the people and thereby will fail to create a path that will develop a healthy and safe future for our citizens. My father raised me to be a doer. If I see something wrong in the world, I make a choice to either do nothing or do something to fix it. The previous board, through open and public meetings and through collaboration, started the fix for an issue that for many years was coming to a head. To date, regulation has been working, and with adjustments, we can finally have a permanent solution. It will take hard work, some sacrifice, cooperation, collaboration, and an open and sensible dialogue. Isn't that what our government is supposed to do? Isn't that the direction this board should take? As a supervisor, I felt my job was to listen to the people, all of the people, not just the loud ones, but the ones that are also afraid to speak up. Then I would take all of the information and I received and try to find a solution that would create the best possible outcome, not just for now, but far into the future as well. That's the tough decisions supervisors must make. In the first 2 months, the current board could have legally put a moratorium in place. Did you know that? You could have legally done that. But you didn't, did you? You didn't stop it. You could have stopped all grows for up to 2 years legally. You chose to continue the approval of grows, and by doing so, you have invited and approved the cannabis industry to continue in Calaveras County. That became and is board direction. Many people continue to invest, and now you're liable for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening again, Robert Schufeld. I usually come up here and save all my comments for cannabis days, and budget day is pretty important, so I was here and decided to stick around for this. And some of the things that I've gotten up here and talked about was how we're basically running down a one-way street towards ugliness, and we're pretty far down that street right now. And I know that we're all feeling it, we all see it, we're all in this room, we all watch the videos after the fact. And the way that we've been managing this process is what's leading to it's leading to increased ugliness. We could be doing this better. We could be collaborating, but instead this is just some divisive wedge issue that's getting, there's fear mongering, there's everything just gets blown out of proportion. It's really crazy, and it's like we have this, we're sitting here squabbling over $500,000 in this huge budget of ours. And what's left unsaid is that we're about to just kick $14 million out of that budget. It doesn't make, it makes zero sense. And in my household, our budget is much smaller, but if the proportions were similar and we were having decisions like this, it wouldn't be something that we'd even have to discuss. My wife would know. I would know. My 2-year-old son would know, because it's incredible to turn your back on that is weird, because it is not the registered industry that is your problem. If you regulate, you will not have all these problems. It's the foot dragging on the implementation of regulation, and it's this weird stuff that we're now starting to get read into this podium, that we could have avoided all of this ugliness with some decisive action that takes into account the entire good of the entire county. And we're not really doing that. I don't see us moving in that direction, and it makes me sad. And I've been up here, I usually come in to tell you guys, you're making me sad, because it's weird. It just doesn't make any sense. Like I said, my 2-year-old would have this on lock. And it's not that confusing. If you talk to him, you talk to like anyone who isn't just hell-bent ideologically biased on this, they see that there is good and there is bad, and there's something good that can come out of this. And the process that we're using to ban seems like it's just increasing the ugliness, and it just doesn't make any sense to me why we're doing this. And I really just got to use my 3 minutes to point that out, because I don't like seeing people fight. You know, I talked to you about this, Dennis, about when we, you know, the last huge divisive issue was fill the dam. Filling the dam, we're still healing from that. And all you seem to care about was you won. And that was amazing to me. That informed me about my supervisor immediately. And I, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. And now here we are. We're about to do something that's more divided. Like, we're tearing the community apart. We need to fix it.
Thank you. Public comment? Further public comment? Ma'am, have you spoken before in the public comment today?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
That's why I'm here.
Okay. It's been a long day for me.
I can understand that. I was here too. Two times in the past year, a petition was put to the public to sign. The last 5,200 signatures were more than enough to put it on the ballot. The people did not get to vote on the issue because the pot lawyers used a technicality that disqualified it. Too bad the technicality wasn't found by the county council when he signed it, before thousands of hours were spent by many volunteers in the searing heat to gather the signatures. The petition excluded all commercial marijuana from Calaveras County, including dispensaries, which are a backdoor to commercial cultivation. Calaveras County has an opportunity to lead towards sanity or be a part of the insanity. The proliferation of this drug is not to meet medical needs, it is for recreational use, which leads to drug enslavement. In the meantime, the very difficult job you have before you would not be if the proliferation of marijuana had not been ignored by law enforcement and county officials in the past, and the emergency ordinance that served as a further magnet to drug proliferation. Human lives have been negatively impacted by this issue. If Sheriff Kuntz were here alive and had to do it over again, I have a feeling he would have been more proactive in stemming the growing of marijuana. No one is immune to its influence in our county. It's kind of like the leader of North Korea using nuclear power information that Clinton gave to North Korea for its country's electrical needs, only to have North Korea turn around and use it to make bombs, to threaten and blackmail us, and share the nuclear secrets with Iran, who wants us dead. How so? For starters, the marijuana growing has nuked our soils, which will have to be contended with for generations to come. It's like a wedding cake, each tier for each year. The ingredients are herbicides, pesticides, high-potency fertilizers, rodenticides, which kill all life and up and down our streams, our ponds, our aquifers, our rivers, and our lakes. Water is life, and there is no life without it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public speakers?
Board Chair, I would just like to make a brief comment just to clear the record, because I've heard statements on multiple occasions that were just recently brought up in public comment about my office and the ban initiative and whether we should or shouldn't have caught certain legalities. I just want to make it very clear that my office does not provide legal assistance to members of the public. We do not review voter initiatives for legalities. That is on the initiative proponents to seek their own legal advice and to get legal counsel independently. My office does not provide legal counsel to voter proponents. And so I just want to make it very clear, we have certain requirements. Don't know why there's so much feedback. It's North Korea. So I just want to make it very clear, my office has certain duties for duties under the elections code, but we do not provide legal counsel and we do not advise, nor could we even if we identified things, nor could we give them legal advice on ways that they could improve their initiative. That is on the proponent to seek their own independent legal counsel.
Thank you, counsel. No more public comments, then no. No more public comments, then Madam Clerk.
Supervisor announcements. In compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 53232.3D, board members shall provide brief reports on meetings they attended at the expense of the local agency at the next regular meeting of the legislative body. This report is required to include meetings attended for which there has been expense reimbursement, mileage, meals, lodging, etc., but may also, at the board member's discretion, include any other meeting attended by the supervisor on behalf of the county.
Would you like to go first, Supervisor Clapp?
Yeah, I have nothing to report out. My Area 12, which would have to be reported out, was canceled this month, so I have nothing to report out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Mills.
August 30th, we met with 2 Oakdale Irrigation District directors to discuss options on creating a basin authority within Lake Tulloch area and to hear their take on the opportunity. September 1st, spoke before the Mountain Counties Water Association directors on the impacts of pollution from marijuana operations in the foothill and its long-term effects not only on watersheds but the drinking water supplies for the state. I started that off with what role will you play in not repeating the Eel River. September 2nd, spoke to the Poker Flat Homeowners Association on the status of projects within their area and to take questions and hear concerns. CCWD and the Sheriff's Marine Safety Unit were also present. September 5th, had an alternate 10 Angels Camp Business Association coffee talk conversation with others continued till almost noon. I attended the Oakdale Irrigation District Board meeting to discuss the concerns with Lake Tulloch operations. Also attended the Council of Governments meeting where initial discussion on who will handle transit was started. September 7th, attended the Cal Waste 90th anniversary dinner and discussed how the county can continue that partnership. Spent over 2 hours with our GIS team that same day reviewing their capabilities and understanding how they can integrate data collection with pollution on parcels for all agencies involved to work with and cleanup process. September 8th, attended CSAC training on the county budgeting along with 2 analysts, Bonnie and Krista from the administrative office, and the 3 of us spent a great deal of time with notes. I would say Tim has some well-rounded analysts to help him. I will be attending the Eastern San Joaquin Groundwater Authority meeting tomorrow in Stockton with Angels Camp Business Association mixer in the evening. And for those that are curious, I did find someone who was willing to donate a big frog for the front of our building area whenever we can go get it. Steve Kovacs, former fire chief, Murphy's Fire, will be pinned in Scotts Valley on Saturday. We'll be there. Congratulations to Bill Fullerton from West Point Fire on accepting the OES position of the county. I think it's a great fit. I've requested the PACE program be on the agenda. That goes back to late January. I hope that eventually we'll be able to see that again. And with SB1, when we have that discussion, I would also like to see self-help and how we can certify as self-help for that. The other part of the discussion before I go is 54954.3. Which is what it says as we go into public comment, and I'm going to start to get a little feisty about this because it says that those are items that are within the purview of the Board of Supervisors. If you're making a discussion in front of this board and it is not something that the board can discuss, it is not an item they can agendize, then it should not allowed to be something that is allowed to be spoken before this board. And I don't know if other supervisors agree with the same thing, but if we're going to go into attack mode, then we will have to go a different direction. Office of Sheriff, I don't know if you heard about the suspect that was arrested on the boat thefts in Copperopolis, and they found all the boats. Not that they were all in good condition, but they found all the boats. So that's good news, even though it's not good news.
Thank you, Supervisor Mills. Supervisor Tofinelli?
Well, Supervisor Mills did cover the COG meeting that we had, and the city is supposed to be contacting Mary Kelly, I believe, is supposed to be contacting the CAO for set up a meeting for our committee to go over that transition of the transportation, public transit. I do want to report out, though, I did play, and it was mentioned earlier, the chamber spoke, public comment earlier, that I did play in the Tri-Chamber Golf Tournament at Castle Oaks in Ione on Thursday. We had myself, Megan, Kristen Brink, and Coach. And it was no public funds were used for it. I paid for 3 of the slots, and Megan paid for herself. And I'm proud to say that we had an excellent team. Par was 71. We shot 61. We were 10 under. We were not the lowest score, so we did not win the trophy, but we did very, very well. And Kristen was the first time she played golf, but because we had some excellent coaches, by the end of the day, that lady was hitting the ball very well. Is that correct, Megan? She was hitting very well, and she takes a mighty swing at it, I'll tell you. She's not shy at swinging that club at that ball, but she got excited, and I think she's going to continue. She told me that she's ready for the next tournament. And one other thing I got to tell you is, it wasn't brought up, and Kristen wasn't here today, but at each hole, as you teed off, they had different booths and different contests and things to do. Megan was the hula hoop champ. Kristen. Oh, Kristen, I'm sorry, not Megan. Kristen was the hula hoop champ. The longest somebody had done before we pulled up there was 54 seconds. And Kristen hula hooped for 5 minutes, and they shut her down. They said, "That's it, you won." And so we went back to the clubhouse at the end of the tournament, and it was the talk of the clubhouse. This lady from Calaveras County had hula hooped for 5 minutes. So thank you, Kristen. Good job.
Gary, how long did you go for?
I did not hula hoop. I was in the beer drinking contest.
There you go. I knew you were going to tell us something.
Mr. Chair, I am tired, so I'm going to pass.
All right. I'm going to make this short and sweet. On the 30th, on Wednesday, I was down at the Public Access TV studios and did a half-hour program regarding county and District 3 and how it interacts with what's going on in today's world. On the 31st, I attended the Sokokoy Woods dinner, and subject of conversation was the Blagan Road Bridge. Hopefully we've got some progress on that, and I'll be checking with Mr. Groves in the morning. Had a meeting with Tom Sullivan, one of my constituents, and Tom has offered to, seeing that I am not able to meet all of my appointments up in District 3 and down in San Andreas at the same time. Tom has volunteered to be assisting and meeting and bringing problems to me that we can both either handle together or I can get answers back to him. And Supervisor Tofinelli, you're aware that the board chair position is quite busy. A lot of things happen. And sometimes you just can't be in your own district when you need to be, but it's a great position. I'm really enjoying it. But now with the help of Mr. Sullivan, who sits on the Ebbets Pass Fire Board, we're able to get our word out a little bit and help some of our people. On the 2nd, I attended the, I take that back, I'm sorry, not on the 2nd. On the 9th, I attended the NRA benefit dinner to benefit charities and the NRA, and found that that was an exciting event. It was packed. They had sold out. They had to put extra tables down. I did a real good job. And on Sunday, I had the honor of emceeing the fundraiser for Jace Jones, who's a little infant that was born with a very rare blood disease and is the grandson of one of my constituents in Arnold. This disease is 4 in 1 million people. It was sponsored through the CODA, which is the Children's Organ Transplant Association, which is a nationwide association. And once again, Calaveras County, Arnold, Murphys, Dorrington came out in droves and opened their wallets and did a fantastic job. In closing, I've been in this county a long time, maybe not as long as most people, and I've been wearing a badge and a gun. I've been a supervisor, but it astounds me how these counties, these communities pull together. And I'm not just talking about District 3. We see it in Valley Springs. We see it in West Point. We see it in Burson. We see it in Copperopolis. And that's what keeps me going at times. So, I'm enough. That's enough. Meeting adjourned.